If you listen to the media, Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping was presented as a trade meeting. It was about tariffs, manufacturing, supply chains, and agriculture. But the deeper story has a lot less to do with trade itself and a lot more to do with what the meeting revealed about where the global economy is heading next. Because just days after meeting Trump in Beijing, Xi met with Vladimir Putin. China is continuing to expand its influence across BRICS and the developing world. We're seeing supply chains being reorganized, tariffs are rising again, and countries are becoming more protective of energy, technology, and trade. The world built after the Cold War was based around one dominant global system led by the United States. But that system is becoming more unstable, more fragmented, and increasingly divided into competing economic and geopolitical blocs. And China is positioning itself to be at the center for what comes next. Right now, the US and China do roughly $582 billion in trade between each other. That means the United States and China are still deeply tied together economically, even after years of tariffs, trade fights, and growing political tension. America still depends heavily on China for manufacturing, electronics, rare earth minerals, and huge parts of the global supply chain. China still depends heavily on the United States for advanced semiconductor technology, agricultural imports, aircraft, and access to the global financial system built around the dollar. And that's what made the Beijing meeting so important. China agreed to resume major soybean purchases and order 200 Boeing aircraft, its biggest official Boeing deal in nearly a decade. And Trump also hinted that the US may ease some restrictions on semiconductor sales to China, telling reporters that Chinese officials would be talking more to Nvidia going forward and that Washington would serve as a referee rather than a gatekeeper. But underneath those deals, the bigger tensions are still there. Taiwan, semiconductor competition, military pressure in the Pacific, supply chain dependence, none of that was resolved. That's what made the meeting so revealing. America and China are trying to economically compete while still remaining deeply dependent on each other at the exact same time. And right now, neither side can fully separate from the other without causing major damage to itself. So, to understand what's breaking right now, you first need to understand what was built. After the Cold War ended, the global economy became more connected than ever before. China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001 and quickly became the factory floor for much of the world. For a lot of countries worldwide, shipping costs collapsed and it became cheaper to manufacture goods on the other side of the planet than down the street. You saw supply chains stretched across dozens of countries, all built around one goal: producing things as cheaply as possible. American consumers got cheap electronics, cheap clothes, and cheap goods of every kind. Chinese workers got jobs, large corporations got massive profits, and global trade exploded to record highs. The system worked because one assumption held everything together: efficiency mattered more than resilience. If a factory in Beijing was 15% cheaper than a factory in Ohio, production moved to Beijing. If a shipping route through the Strait of Hormuz saved 2 days, companies used it. Nobody really planned for what would happen if the factory shut down or the shipping route shut down, because for decades, the system kept working. The global economy became deeply interconnected because the incentive was always the same: faster, cheaper, more integrated. And for a long time, it worked really well. The first time we saw a major crack in the system was the pandemic. When Chinese factories shut down in early 2020, global supply chains started breaking almost immediately. Car companies couldn't get chips, hospitals couldn't get masks, and countries and companies realized that supply chains built entirely around efficiency had become incredibly fragile. But COVID wasn't really the root cause of all this. It just exposed the problems that had already been building for years. In 2025 alone, more than 2,500 new trade restrictions were introduced around the world. US tariffs on Chinese goods sit at 47%. Russia's invasion of Ukraine resulted in sanctions that froze $300 billion in reserves and cut Russia off from the Western financial system. And that showed Russia and a lot of other countries around the world that access to the Western financial system could be cut off almost overnight. And slowly, governments started changing the way they think about globalization. Countries are no longer focused only on efficiency and low cost. They're starting to focus more on security, resilience, and political alignment too. That's why terms like reshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring, and China plus one suddenly became so important. They all point to the same thing. The world is moving away from a system built purely around cheap production and becoming more divided along political and strategic lines. Now, Trump was not the only leader Xi Jinping had met, because 5 days after Trump left Beijing, Putin arrived in the same city, the same building, and to attend the same ceremony with the same host. And that alone says a lot about how China sees its position in the world right now. Xi and Putin signed more than 40 agreements covering energy, trade, technology, and media cooperation. Putin described energy as the driving force of their economic partnership, and Russia continues supplying China with massive amounts of oil and natural gas. A lot of it sold at discounted prices after Western sanctions hit Moscow. And more of that trade is now being settled in yuan and rubles instead of dollars. They both issued a joint declaration calling for a multipolar world and a new type of international relations. And they warned against what they described as the danger of the international community fragmenting into the law of the jungle. But the bigger story in all of this is what the relationship represents. Right now, it does seem like Russia needs China a lot more than China needs Russia. Putin is the partner seeking a lifeline, and Xi is the host providing one. But the strategic logic runs both ways. Russia gets an economic lifeline and a market for sanctioned energy. China gets cheap fuel to power its manufacturing base. They also get a geopolitical partner that shares its interest in challenging US dominance. And they get another country willing to help build systems that operate outside direct Western control. And slowly, the relationship between the two countries is becoming bigger than just trade itself. They're building payment systems, energy networks, and trade routes designed to reduce dependence on the United States and the broader Western financial system. That doesn't mean China and Russia are replacing the West anytime soon. They definitely are not. But it does show how the global system is starting to fragment into separate centers of power instead of one dominant system led almost entirely by the United States. Now, energy is where all of this starts becoming very real. The Iran war, which began in early 2026, disrupted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil shipping routes in the world. Oil prices surged above $100 a barrel, gas prices in the US jumped sharply too, and this matters a lot for China, because China imports enormous amounts of oil, roughly 11 million barrels per day. And a lot of that oil goes through shipping routes that pass near US naval assets and allied checkpoints. That's one reason China's relationship with Russia matters so much. Russian oil and natural gas help reduce China's dependence on global shipping routes controlled heavily by the US and its allies. And slowly, more of that trade is being settled in yuan instead of dollars. That means each new pipeline and each new supply agreement settled in yuan rather than dollars is a small reduction in Western leverage. Iran allowing some oil shipments to move through the Strait of Hormuz using yuan instead of dollars is a major sign that parts of the global energy system are slowly moving away from the US dollar. All of this sounds very technical, but the bigger shift is actually very simple. Energy is becoming geopolitical again. Countries are starting to think less about what's cheapest and more about what's secure, and who supplies your energy is starting to matter, who controls the shipping routes is starting to matter, and even the currency used to buy that energy is starting to matter too. Now, the dilemma that the United States faces is they're trying to slow down China's technological rise while still depending heavily on China economically at the exact same time. That's why the US keeps restricting semiconductor exports, they keep raising tariffs, and they're trying to move parts of its supply chain elsewhere. But it's also why fully separating from China has proven so difficult. One of the biggest examples of this is rare earth minerals. China controls 60 to 70% of global rare earth mining and roughly 90% of processing. And those materials are essential from everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to military equipment and advanced technology. And when China restricted some rare earth exports in 2025, the US had to make significant concessions. They had to reduce tariffs, delay tech restrictions, they had to buy more agricultural exports, and they did all of this just to get a 1-year pause, and it exposed how dependent the US and much of the global economy still are on Chinese supply chains. And that's the contradiction at the center of the relationship. America wants to reduce its dependence on China while still remaining deeply tied to it economically. The Beijing meeting revealed both sides of that reality at the exact same time. Trump promoted new trade deals and hinted at easing some technology restrictions. Then just days later, Xi hosted Putin and continued strengthening China's relationship with Russia. Both sides gained something, but none of the deeper tensions actually disappeared. And that may be the biggest shift happening underneath the global economy right now. The world isn't splitting apart, but it is slowly reorganizing into competing blocs economically, politically, and strategically. And China is trying to position itself at the center of as many of those conversations as possible.